Hello, hello. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I am excited to break this down because I post quite a bit on social media, but various posts, as we all know, flop or do amazingly. And this podcast episode is going to be based on a post that did amazingly. And I kind of expected it to because it's something that's financial, and therapists love to see financial breakdown things. I know I love to. I'm nosy. I want to know exactly what happened that went into someone's high figure month. So in April of 2026, I made a $71,000 month as a therapist and coach. So before your brain does what I know it wants to do, let me just stop you right there because the story is so much more interesting than the number. And honestly, that number kind of doesn't matter without everything and the story that comes with it. So that's what I'm going to talk about more in depth today because I can only give so much context on a Instagram carousel, and I can give a lot more here. So this episode, if you are a therapist or maybe you are a coach listening to this, you're not even a therapist, but you're just someone who wants more from your life. If you are someone who is skeptical around, is there still space in the coaching world? Do digital products like courses and PDFs, are they still selling in 2026? If you have been told this is impossible, launches are dead, all that stuff, I'm obviously going to prove all of that wrong. And none of this is a brag fest. I'm not going to tell you how amazing I am and how simple things are and things like that. This is really just a breakdown of exactly what went into what, right? To be able to show you more behind the scenes of what it actually looks like to have high figure months. And a quick disclaimer, again, I'm going to talk about real numbers and real expenses and real timeline because I know you all see all of the same posts and ads I do that talk about things like, I posted this one story set and it made me $20,000. And that's just not enough info. So it's not the most accurate of info. So I want to make this as accurate as possible. So, what my practice actually looks like right now, because I get this question a lot, both from my current coaching clients and from other therapists. I want to start there because I am still active in my therapy practice, and that doesn't look it means that my life looks different than a lot of other therapists or therapists turned coaches or people who are doing both or whatever that looks like. But my therapy practice it's on the smaller end. I have a very small caseload of clients that I see weekly or every other week or monthly or even just like as needed. They just kind of reach out. So I do still practice therapy as well as I have my weekly sessions as well as therapy intensives. Y'all know I'm really big on that. I do also have my coaching clients. I do both group coaching as well as one-to-one coaching. And then obviously I release things like programs, digital content, courses, my mastermind, stuff like that. So this question of, well, how long did it take to get here? So I am filming this in June 2026. And I think if I look back at all of my official business documentation, then I actually registered my coaching business as a business if it wasn't late May 2023, it was early June 2023. I think it was June 5th, 2023. So literally it's about 3 years, which is really cool because so much has happened personally and professionally in those 3 years. And it's both one of those things that feels like 3 years is a lot of time, but it also flies by. So yes, it's taking me 3 years to have a $71,000 month, but number one, that's not necessarily the goal is how do we get you to have these specific types of months. But I think for the person who thinks a lot of this stuff has to take forever, it doesn't actually have to take forever. And I think there's benefits to it not being something that you experience super quickly. I think in the age of AI and even just technology as we've had it, smartphones and the internet, and wow, I'm sounding really old right now. We are so used to instant gratification, right? Just because you're not going to launch a product and sell it out tomorrow, that doesn't mean that it's not worth putting time, energy, and effort into it. So really, this doesn't have to take as long as I think a lot of people say, and also it's not as easy as I think most people make it look. But the whole reason I chose to scale to begin with, my private practice origin story, so to speak, was I loved it. I loved building something for myself and doing something for me. And primarily what I loved is I'm my own boss now. So I do not answer to anybody. I do have what's called an online business manager, and she helps me keep on track of like timelines for projects and launches and things like that. But ultimately, she works for me. So, like, I am in charge of what I do and how much I work. I didn't fully own that in 2022 when I launched my private practice. I really felt like, well, this is the way everyone says you're supposed to do it. And so that's what I did. I did it the way everyone's supposed to do it. So I was doing all 45 to 60-minute sessions. I was seeing everyone in that specific way. I think I built up a caseload up to like 22. Sometimes on a really busy week, it'd be like 24, 26, especially if every now and then I had someone ask to be seen twice in a week. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I can do that. Like, I didn't do that at the counseling center I worked at. But I was really feeling, I don't know if it was burnout, like new burnout. I was definitely burnt out from the agency that I left, but I was tired, right? I knew that I couldn't do that forever. And once I started joining more therapist Facebook groups and just talking with more therapists, I really started to see therapists who had embraced the fact that they literally can do whatever it is that they want. And so I decided I want to do something different. I want to kind of break my own mold. And the very easy change that I saw a lot of private practice therapists making is I offer 75 to 90-minute sessions. And I was like, well, that's really cool. I want to do that too, because I work with couples and I work with trauma. So let me move into this thing that seems like an easy thing to move into that might help some of the things that I'm struggling with right now. And so once I kind of felt more solid in my private practice, that's when I realized I was actually really, really good at running a business. And I had this entire other area of my brain that had an itch that needed scratching. And that was mentorship. And that's where I launched my coaching business, because I get to mentor people on things like how to grow a private practice. I don't love a lot of the like starting a private practice stuff. It's a little bit too much like, here's the paperwork and here's a legal website and blah, blah, blah. I really love, okay, you're good with where you're at, but now let's help you grow. Let's help you see more potential and expand. And so launching my coaching practice was all about scratching this itch of mentorship and being able to work with people in a very different way, in a very different emotional load than therapy. And so I still very much love doing both. I love being a therapist. I will never give that up. There's a lot of coaches out there who were therapists, added coaching, and then let go of their therapy practices, because essentially, if they were in the same rooms I was in, and a lot of them were, they were getting the feedback of, if you really want to scale this coaching business, you have to let go of your therapy business. Your therapy income is capped. Your coaching, whatever other business you're adding, is uncapped. Like, that is the space where you should be focusing. And I always had a values misalignment with that. I didn't love that. I worked really hard for my therapy degree. I love my therapy clients. I love being a therapist. So I'm never going to let that go. So I will always be a therapist and coach, not a therapist turned coach. And so for me, looking back on the past 3 years of having both businesses, this is what I really want to share in this episode, is not just this, breakdown of how I got to a $71,000 month, but specifically, what does this actually look like? Because I think a lot of people have misconceptions about what it looks like either way, to be both a therapist and coach, or to just be a coach. And a lot of that is that stuff we see on social media that looks super glamorous, right? Of like having your margarita on the beach on a Tuesday at 2 p.m. or working 4-hour work weeks or things like that. And my life is not that glamorous. I do travel quite a bit. I travel a lot for business retreats, in a large part because I mean, I love international travel. If we can make international travel a business expense, then why not? It's been a way that I've met many of my close friends these days, which is awesome because it doesn't feel like networking, because a lot of the times I don't even live in the same state as the people who are on these business retreats, but it's just a way of like meeting like-minded people, which has always been super, super fun. So my months, my years are not glamorous of like, here I am on a yacht or buying my giant house. I actually sold a house in Oregon to move to Seattle, Washington, and I pay more in rent than I was paying in a mortgage. But this is not about like how little I work. And I even did some of that breakdown too for this podcast episode of in April 2026, because that's the month I'm talking about for this episode. I saw 21 I had 21 one-to-one coaching calls, and those are usually about 45 minutes. Sometimes they run over just like a therapy session, right? Because people have more questions or last minute things they need answered, or like it doesn't feel good to leave something at like I like putting the bow on the end of a thing. So 21 about hours of one-to-one coaching calls. I had 8 group coaching calls. Some of those are 1-hour calls. Some of those are 90-minute calls for my mastermind. I had 21 hours in therapy sessions. I guess 2 of those hours was a therapy intensive. And that is less. I know a lot of people know me for the trauma work. So I do EMDR and brain spotting intensives, as well as couples work. So I do EFT, emotionally focused therapy intensives. But I also recently added discernment counseling, which by nature is an intensive model. Like they literally teach you to do these in 90 to 120 minute sessions. So that was 2 of my 21 hours was doing a discernment counseling session. I also did 4 podcast guest episodes. So I hosted 4 different guests, and those are about an hour as well. So that's about, I should have done this part of the math, but 42, 50, that's about 54 hours of like live being in those types of meetings. And then I have meetings with my OBM or with my VA. So a few other meetings, few other hours of meetings on top of that. And then there was, meetings with my coach. And then there was doing a lot of admin stuff. So I'm not going to lie and say, I don't see anyone. Like I don't have any live calls, because that's what a lot of people kind of paint this picture and this goal as, is that's what you should be doing. You should basically never be on a live call or you won't scale your income. And obviously that is not the case for this $71,000 month that I'm talking about here. So that's some of the like actual live things that were going on. So again, it's not a 4-hour, 3-day work week or something like that. So I'm going to break down each revenue stream here in terms of what brought in what. So my therapy business with that one intensive session, and then otherwise like 50, 55-ish minute sessions, was $7,183. Of my one-to-one coaching, I currently only have one therapist in a coaching container because I don't do a lot of separate one-to-one work. I love it, but I do a lot of it in my mastermind. So I only have one coaching client who is in a pure one-to-one coaching container. She pays generally about $2,000 a month. That was my fee when we started, but she paid in full for 6 months for $11,500. So obviously that was a huge bump and a huge component of that $71,000 for April. For my mastermind, my Happy, Healthy, Wealthy mastermind that helps therapists with scaling beyond therapy, I have 2 cohorts running of that right now. Each one has, I think, 7 therapists in each of them. And I had one person pay a deposit to join the August round of that. So that brought in $14,158 for April. I launched my Therapy Intensives Academy program, as well as I have that running in ads, and I've got various funnels set up for that, and that brought in $31,337. I also have my SEO for Therapist membership, which people can either buy an annual option or they can buy a monthly option. I had some new enrollments, I had recurring enrollments, and then I think maybe there was one. No, actually, that number, I don't think there was one annual option enrollment. So from the SEO membership, I had $1,102. I have a couple of brand deals that I do. So various brands that I promote, they are sponsors of this podcast, or sometimes people ask me for kind of a one-off thing. For April, that was $4,300. And then I have random like affiliate links or bump orders for when I'm selling something. It's like, do you want to add on this for just blah, blah, blah dollars? For April, that was $1,612. So the full total was right above the $71,000 mark, which is officially the highest I have made in my past 3 years of business. There's been a couple months where I've gotten to like the mid 50 range, but that 71,000 is officially the biggest, which is super, super exciting. And there's a couple things that I want to point out here, and all of this is for me by choice. So obviously I just read off that I have multiple streams of income. There is not one like magic thing that works for me. And that is a choice. There are a lot of coaches and educators out there who will tell you you need to be known for one thing. There are some people who only do one-to-one coaching. There are some people who only do masterminds. There are some people who only sell this one course. And ultimately, honestly, that is up to you, what you choose to do there. I didn't specifically add all of these streams because, of like wanting or feeling like I needed to. Like the more the better, so to speak, because it's not necessarily the more the better. Like the more you have to market, the more you have to market. And I experienced this when I did my first in-person retreat in October 2025. I was so busy launching everything else. I don't think I had the capacity to really market a retreat. And I got 3 people to sign up for it. 2 of the 3 of them were people I had already worked with in a coaching program. And something about my brain says, well, that doesn't count. You're supposed to get new people to sign up all the time, which is something I've worked through in coaching and therapy, which is, that's not the point. Actually, like warm leads are probably going to be people who continue to work with you, continue to pay you. And that's okay. That's not any less of a win. But it's not that I do all of these different things because I feel like I have to. It's because that's the way that my brain works. As someone with ADHD, I love to do a variety of tasks. I would be really bored if all I did was, I've got my therapy clients and then I've got my coaching clients and that's it. I need to do a little bit of a lot of things to feel like I'm scratching some kind of itch so that I don't feel like I'm bored. I continue to play with that with my own business coach of, okay, some of these things are starting to feel like they're in a groove. They're not like boring, but it's kind of monotonous. It's kind of the same thing over and over again. So we're trying to think about how do you continue to promote what you have with, maybe doing a slightly different take on it, like a little variation of it. Like, how do you still support the people you want to support in the ways you want to support them without having like a competing offer, so to speak, or without confusing people? Like diversification is the point, right? The more diverse streams of income you have, the more potential you have to get income from those streams. But you want to be able to do like marketing. What's the words I'm looking for here? You want to market each of them well. You want to do them all justice. That's what I was trying to say in one sentence. So the other part I want to talk about here is the expenses, because these numbers did not just magically happen. So I'm breaking down what I literally paid that month, but there's some context I want to give to this too. When I do a launch, I and my team, which is my OBM, she's my online business manager. She also does some VA tasks, and I have 2 VAs. For prepping for a launch, so we did, again, a launch of the Therapy Intensive Academy. It was a week-long sale where I did a live webinar, and then we were doing posts and emails and all that kind of stuff. That generally takes about 8 weeks of prep work, because we've got some team, like my team only works so many hours per week. I don't want to work so ridiculously long. So could we do it in a shorter period of time if we had more hours and like unlimited budget and unlimited capacities? Sure, probably. But for my team's capacity, for my budget of what I can spend on team, for what I still want to take home, they, in total, I believe they work about 150 hours per month. So just for 1 month in, I think this was their April invoices, that was $5,910. Now, because I'm saying we prepped for this for 2 months, in theory, you could argue that you could double that amount of expenses for like, what did it really take to get a $71,000 month? It took more than just a month's worth of work. It took multiple months we were working, not just 2. It took up all the time that I've, have launched this thing in the past and all the other work we put into it and the copywriters I hired and the web designer I hired and all of that stuff. So like there's a lot of things that aren't seen in the background. But for that month of April, for team support, it was about $6,000. For me getting my own business coaching, so I still work with a one-to-one coach. I love her. She's been so helpful. I will probably continue to working with her for as long as I literally can. Generally, her fee is about $1,500 a month, but I paid her in full at the end of December, which was part of my tax strategy to cut down on last year's tax liability. But she does a revenue share model, which is the base fee is $1,500 a month, but then 10% of any new revenue is something that is paid to her each month. So what I paid her in April was for, because you pay like the month after. So I reported my March income and I paid my March revenue share in April, and that was about $2,095. The following month, then in May, because I had a $71,000 month, obviously that was that 10% was much, much higher. So that's something to consider if you're considering working with a coach who does a revenue share model. But for that month at least, because again, we're thinking about March prep going into an April launch in this $71,000 April month, at least the month before that was, you could argue it's the $20,095 plus the $1,500 that I already paid her, just at a different point. And then we played a lot with ads, both for marketing the live webinar that went with the with kicked off the launch, as well as ads that promoted the sale. So across those two of, hey, there's a webinar happening and hey, there's a sale happening, I spent about $4,129.23. So obviously it cost a lot to run the business month to month. That's not even mentioning different things I use, like my Asana platform for organizing our to-do list, our CRM system, which is a client relationship manager, which houses my email marketing and my courses and just helps us keep a lot of things organizing. So there is cost to both running the business as well as prepping for these big income months. These don't just come from nowhere. And certainly, like, the more you've built out, the more you can reuse and your expenses can get lower with each time so that you can increase your profit margins. So what I actually kept, generally my coaching business is an S Corp, so it's taxed at that level. So I do pay myself through payroll about $2,500 a month, as well as do any like owner's distributions on top of that. But from April, with this $71,000 month, I actually had a huge profit just sitting in that account. And I could have chose to, I have some business savings, I could have put more in, but I also have like personal debts. And so I did choose to do a $30,000 profit distribution, which felt wild, which felt amazing from a personal perspective, and wiping out some debt that way also felt really, really good. So that was really exciting. And honestly, I'm so excited for like what that's going to continue to bring me in terms of peace of mind of, if I can replicate this in the future with all the work that I know how to do, I know how to repeat it, I know my 8-week timeline for doing this, like that feels amazing for me to know how much control I have over not just my business, but also my personal life circumstances. So I really want to share all of this because we all look at gross revenue, which can feel really exciting, right? The people who are like, I had $100,000 month, I had $1 million year. But honestly, all of this is just vanity metrics when we're not talking about what we actually walked away with. And for me to walk away with a $30,000 profit distribution, like that is huge. I've literally never done that before. I think the max I've ever done is like $7,000 or $9,000 before. So it's important, and like it does feel good, and it doesn't feel in alignment with me to not share like what went into that. Because yes, the more you scale your income, it's not necessarily the more you scale your expenses, depending on what kind of business model you do have. Like someone who does a one-to-one coaching model with a revenue share model like my coach does, she actually doesn't have to have that many expenses in terms of launching. Like, that's just not what she does. It's very different for me, where I do launch multiple different types of things and I need a greater amount of team support than she might, for example. So having these real expenses is a sign of, having a real business that has real growth and real potential. And the thing that's also really helpful for me to hear over and over again is high revenue months are repeatable, and we have to be willing to invest in a way that feels good for us. Because at the end of the day, you have two things to invest, which is either your time or your money. And I'm personally not in a place where I want to work the same way I worked when I launched my coaching business, which was I was working nights, I was working weekends to get this thing up and running ASAP so I could start generating revenue ASAP. I don't want to do that again. I don't want to do that. So I will gladly pay my team the 6,000 to sometimes it's more than that if we have an even busier month. I'll gladly pay them $6,000 a month so that I have a life and some sanity outside of just business. So, alongside all of these things, I had to do a lot of mindset work. You all probably hear about that everywhere, and some of us, I think, underplay it or feel like it's underrated. We kind of take it for granted, but we can't out strategy a scarcity mindset, right? If I thought, well, no one's even going to want to work with me one-to-one, no one's even going to want to buy my Therapy Intensive Academy program, then I wouldn't promote it, right? I could have all the strategy in the world of how to make it work, but the way I talk about it wouldn't be as exciting. The way that I sit on discovery calls for my mastermind, I would just be like, yeah, I'm like a guess if you want in on this, as opposed to like, no, I'm really excited and I would love to work with you because I know I can help you. So I've had to do so much mindset work in order to even allow the possibility of making a $71,000 month. There was also a lot of things I've done that has been in the work over many years and is kind of just paying off now. In my therapy practice, I do a lot of SEO stuff, and that truly makes it so helpful where I don't have to market that practice. My team continues to help me with like blog posts and Google business updates and things like that. But I don't market myself these days. And I just booked a $4,000 couples intensive because one of their individual therapists Googled couples intensives in the area and found me and gave it to the couple, right? Like, I didn't have to do networking for that. And that feels really, really good for me. Meanwhile, on the other side, with my coaching business, a lot of that does run on social media as well as ads and email marketing. And it took me a long time to feel like I know what I'm doing in those areas. There are some things I always feel like I can do better with emails or better with ads, but I feel like me and my team really got it right now and are really in a groove. And sure, we can always optimize things, but not just for the sake of optimizing them, right? So for me, really and truly, I am leaning into a space of I don't want to spend more of my time at the cost of, just making as much money as possible. Like, yes, making a $71,000 month, super, super exciting. And right, I wouldn't have been able to do it if I said I have to do all of this myself. If I said I'm not going to hire a team, I don't want to have that expense. It is just so worth it for me to hire them and have them help me with all of the things. And I think it's also really helpful to frame that in this context of working smarter, not harder. Because a lot of us think adding coaching, adding digital products, whatever it is, like that is the solution to our therapy burnout problems. But that's not necessarily the case. Like, yes, I do work harder in the months when I'm launching something, but even still, a busy week for me these days is like a 35 to 40 hour week compared to like a 25 to 30 hour week. So, yes, you are still working harder in some ways, but it doesn't have to be the hardest that you are working. I know so many people who are parents and therapists and coaches and doing volunteer stuff and whatever it is. And like, good on you. And if you're working 60 to 80-hour weeks, like legitimately, is it even worth it? And so really to be able to think about like, what can I handle? What do I want to do? What do I want to create? There's this nervous system piece that we have to talk about of like, how does staying regulated, right? How do I stay grounded in money actually can come easily to me and people do want what I'm putting out there? how does staying regulated in our nervous system actually let us receive more of that abundance instead of sometimes getting in our own way around it, right? Because if we're making decisions out of desperation or scarcity mindset or oh, this is probably crap and no one even wants it from me anyway, like, yeah, like you're not going to put your product out there then, or you're not going to talk about it in a way that someone wants to buy it. So we really have to work on not just the strategy, but how do I take care of myself in this process too? And you're not going to take care of yourself if you are hustling super, super hard to try to get as much done in this business, whatever it is that you're launching. If you're trying to get that done ASAP, you're not going to stay regulated with it. And so some of the takeaways that I want you to hear from this episode is that results like this are not impossible, right? You too can do this. There are real therapists just like me who started exactly where you are right now, not having built anything, not being sure what they want to specialize in, not being sure what their voice is. I continue to find my voice more and more. The longer I'm in this and the better I get at it. But I sucked at this when I first started because I didn't know how to market myself as someone with diverse streams of income. I barely knew how to market myself as a therapist, right? But as we all know, with practice comes, more confidence. So we can't just wait for the confidence first. We have to be willing to try something and then get the confidence. And again, this doesn't have to take forever. When I launched my intensives business, I guess it's all within my therapy business, but when I launched the intensives arms of my coaching, my therapy business, like I did actually see success fairly quickly from that. But with coaching, it does take a little bit longer. And when I say coaching, I mean like if that's courses you've done, retreats, or whatever it is. When it comes to creating something where technically we're kind of taking a little bit of our credibility away in terms of, well, like, have you ever launched a course before? Like, how do people benefit from your courses? Like, when we don't have testimonials yet, it is kind of scary, right? Like, how do you know people want to pay even $97 for this course if no one's bought it before? Well, you're never going to know until you put it out there and you start asking for some feedback and testimonials. So this doesn't take forever and it's not impossible, but it does take work. This is not about like hustle culture level grind, or it's not, just believe harder. Like that's not the type of mindset work I'm talking about. But real strategic work and real mindset work and real investment in building something that lasts, this is where you can really name what that work looked like for you specifically, right? So this is where you can say, I know that when I do this, this is the result I get. I know that when I choose my time over my money, this is what that feels like. Like collect data, right? If you honestly would rather build some stuff out yourself, that's fine. It's just coming at the trade-off of knowing your scaling is going to look different from someone else's scaling who's making the opposite decision. But as long as you know what you are doing and why you're doing it, you can be successful with this too. So if this episode is what you needed to finally believe that a $71,000 month is possible for a therapist and a coach, I want you to take one real next step before you close this podcast. Because I just told you this whole breakdown of my multiple streams, my strategic offers, a marketing foundation that generally works while I'm sleeping these days for my therapy business, not so much my coaching practice that takes a lot more work. And a lot of intentional work goes into building this, which means if you're still in the one stream of therapy only phase of your practice, the gap between where you are right now and where you want to be, it's not just motivation and it's not even just a more information, because there's a lot of information out there. Genuinely, it is a plan and it is taking action. So this is exactly why I built my brand new workshop, the Therapist Scaling Intensive. This is a half-day hands-on virtual workshop on July 17th, where we're going to map out your scalable offer together. Your audience, your offer, your funnel, your launch. This is not generic templates that I'm going to throw at you. We're actually going to work with your actual thing, and I'm going to show you a lot of the tech stuff that no one out there actually shows you when it comes to, but how do I actually make this work? So whether it's a course, a group program, or a retreat, whatever has been burning a hole in your brain that you haven't moved on yet because no one walked you through the how, this is what we're going to cover in the workshop. And so if you're ready to stop dreaming about the diversified income and actually build the thing, grab your seat at the link in the show notes, and I will look forward to seeing you there. Thanks so much for listening in today. Bye bye.